I said, how could I look at Muslims, I don't give any hint of what Islam's about. They don't act anything according to what Islam's about. I would get no idea of what Islam's about by looking at Muslims. In fact, I had to go to the Quran and Hadith in order to finally come up with a true picture of what Islam is all about. But I think it's understandable that maybe someone who considers himself born into Islam and raised in a so-called Muslim family would think, I've had this stuff all my life. I know this stuff. And I think Quran is something to be read at funerals and things like that. Or when you get a new house or something. Again, Roman Catholicism does the same thing. You read the Bible, sprinkle a little water whenever you have something important occasion. And I think we need to get away from this kind of superstitious treatment of the Quran. The Quran is not a book that sits on your shelf and brings you grace simply because it's sitting on the shelf. The Quran is a book that gives you grace when you read it and you put it into practice in your lives. It's not an inert thing. It's not a sacred object like a bone of a saint within the Roman Catholic tradition or whatever, that we rub that bone upon us. That we touch the Quran and then rub it on our body. Read it, bring it into your heart and then into your actions. Make it a live book. That's what the Quran is meant. That's why Aisha said the Prophet's character was Quran-like. But look how we present Islam to our children sometimes. We present it as the most boring set of facts that has ever been set forth. Realizing that it's the most dynamic book that is in existence. In fact, I was listening a few weeks ago to a Muslim lady who was a doctor, and she was encouraging the youth to look at the Quran to see what Allah prohibits, and then to investigate what science has said about the bad effects of those things that the Quran prohibits. I think it was a beautiful idea to tie Quran with something that is going on here and now. Into your life, which is exactly what the Quran is supposed to be doing. It's a book of guidance. And guidance is a direction for action. So maybe we should begin to present Islam in a much more dynamic fashion rather than that sacred book that sits on our shelf and gets dusty and we bring it out at funerals. I'm sorry.
Honorable Speaker, when I came, yes. So my question was answered by you just now. I want to find out from you that according to your analysis of Quran and Bible, it is established fact that the Quran is a miracle. In your research, since you become a Muslim, have you got any such examples which you can tell us where the Quran, the teaching of Quran, or the revelation mentioned in the Quran is for us to lead a good life as a Muslim? In a short, if you have no objection, or if time permits.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Because the whole Quran is like that. The entire Quran is such. In fact, when I look at the Quran, and sometimes I forget it and I have to remind myself of it, it's the only miracle that we have on the face of the earth today. It's the only living miracle. All of the other miracles have been performed by prophets and they ended, except the Quran. The Quran is the only living miracle that we have access to and we neglect it. Many Muslims look around for something else. They're looking for another sign, as Jesus says in the Bible. They're always looking for another sign. They need some other kind of confirmation, and they have the confirmation right with them. The living miracle is in the home of every Muslim, and we forget it. But it's understandable. If you think about it, you usually take your shoes, for example. Just for granted. No one thinks about having a pair of shoes. Most of us don't even think about having a car if you've had a car for a while. If you're married for a while, I suppose you don't even think about your wife or whatever. In the same way, Muslims who've had the Quran, I'm just kidding, Carol. I guess the same way that Muslims who've had the Quran all their life take the Quran for granted, and yet it's a living miracle. And I think that's maybe how we should approach it. That when we encounter this, we're actually encountering Allah speaking to us today through the mouthpiece of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then read it as an occasion for interacting with that living miracle. There are so many books out now that will go into details about, for example, if you're into science, about the scientific miracles of the Quran. If you're into philosophy, you'll find some philosophical miracles and logical miracles of the Quran. For example, it never ceases to amaze me, for example, that when the Quran describes days, that the word day appears 365 times, and it says the word month, that the word month appears 12 times. It's very interesting, these kinds of facts within the Quran that have been revealed. So at any level, whatever your field, you can find some sort of guidance there. I think we should also not de-emphasize the Sunnah, because that Quranic miracle gives even more flesh to it. Sometimes we get the principles within the Quran, and then the flesh is added to that skeleton. For example, we know that we are to pray in the Quran, and then through the Sunnah we know how we are to pray and how many times a day we can pray, and when we can combine it to know more the mercy and the compassion of Allah, that He makes our religion easy upon us. So we cannot neglect the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that those need to be kept in balance.
Okay. Well, we have a question here. It says, Islam has been having a continuous process, say at least as old as Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Please comment.
Comment on what? There's the old... Yeah, in fact it began with Adam. It doesn't begin with Abraham, it begins with Adam, which is also, I think, a very significant fact, that Adam, the very first human on the face of the earth, was also a prophet. And that what he taught was Islam, that he was submitting to the one and only one God. Again, it shows the mercy of God, that Allah does not put us on the face of the earth so that we have to wander around aimlessly trying to figure things out completely for ourselves. That He gives us guidance right from the very beginning. The very first human being was also a prophet and a person who could give guidance. And that every group of people on the face of the earth have been given some form of prophet or a messenger, so that they have not been left alone and they can have a form of guidance. And we see even evidence of this. For example, right now I'm working with a group of American Indians who've never heard anything about Islam.